is the 77 WABC minicast.
Peter King is our famous Irishman, amazing politician, King Giuliani King, however you want to put it. Our best for decades and still a big deal out there on Long Island. Nobody makes a move, okay? Nobody, not even Joe Cairo. Take it easy. Joe Cairo, Bruce Blakeman, Finton, nobody makes a move without Pete King. Okay, but he was intimately involved in all these negotiations, and I think it was the Clinton administration. Is that right, Pete?
Yeah, it is. First of all, happy St. Patrick's Day.
You too.
One little footnote. My son-in-law, my daughter's husband, lived near Bono, and Bono actually worked as a clerk at his post office.
No way.
In Dublin. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's Erin's husband, so he knew him personally. Yeah. I know your son, Sean, he loves you too. I know that.
Sean, between you two and...
he loves Oasis?
Oasis, absolutely. He's right in there. I don't know.
He's got great musical taste.
Don't off your flag fan.
So tell me, what exactly did you do all those years with Clinton to, I guess, did you fix what was going on between Ireland and the UK? What exactly did you do?
Yeah, back in 1922, there was an Irish war against the British, and the 26 counties in south of Ireland basically got independence. The 6 in the north stayed under British rule, and they were sort of forgotten. But the fact is, there was still terrible discrimination. Catholics were effectively denied the right to vote, to have housing. They were second and third class citizens, and this went on when there were peaceful demonstrations against that. The British Army came in. So there was a war going on in Northern Ireland. It was a real war. Thousands were killed between 1969 and then Bill Clinton came in 1993. And I had been involved. I had known people over there. In fact, years ago, my granduncle had been in the IRA in the 1920s. He was in jail. So I was sort of a family history with this. But in any event, I was involved. I knew people like Jerry Adams and others in the North. And so when Bill Clinton came in, I was like the only one in the Congress that had real contacts with Sinn Féin and people who are alleged to be in the IRA. I have to keep saying alleged. And so anyway, he reached out to me, and we worked very, very closely. He gave a visa to Adams to come in here. And by the way, Ted Kennedy and those people, they did absolutely nothing. They were Tip O'Neill. Nobody. It was Bill Clinton that did the most. And then Tony Blair came in Britain, and he realized this had to be brought to an end. There was the Irish Prime Minister, Bertie Ahern. And so I was often going back and forth. And once or twice after there was a ceasefire and the IRA broke it, and Bill Clinton had to cut off official connections with Jerry Adams and Sinn Féin, I was like the unofficial emissary going over there, meeting with them. And it went on. And then there was this led finally to the Good Friday Agreement, which was supposed to be the Holy Thursday Agreement. It didn't get done on time. But, I mean, that whole night leading up to it, I mean, the negotiations were really, really serious right until about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And so the agreement was finally signed. But New York played a real role in this. And that's why, I was not that big into the drinking on St. Patrick's Day. That's more for amateurs and people who want to make believe they're Irish. The St. Patrick's Day parade was really effectively used by Cardinal O'Connor, too, to publicize the issue. He actually greeted Jerry Adams on the steps of St. Patrick's for the 1996 parade, which is ironic because I was the Grand Marshal in 1985.
Wow.
And the media and the British consulate put tremendous pressure on Cardinal O'Connor not to review the parade because I was the Grand Marshal. Well, not only did he review it, but he actually came out on the steps. We shook hands, and that picture was all over Ireland, Northern Ireland, and Britain. And so anyway, that's what St. Patrick's Day was used during those days. And in Washington, Bill Clinton used that as an opportunity because he invited everybody over here to Washington for different so-called festivities, and he'll be negotiating hard behind the scenes with them. Anyway, bottom line is the Good Friday Agreement in 1998 was an excellent compromise. Everyone's rights have been recognized. There's been virtually no real violence since then. I noticed that immediately, because I've been over there about 30 times. There used to be barbed wire and armored cars, people being shot. I mean, it was really a terrible situation. I go over there a year later in 1999, and they had this massive hockey arena. People were there. I mean, it was just the life had changed, and people went back and forth between the North and the South. So hopefully this kind of work is still not totally ironed out, but it's nothing like it was. I mean, it's absolutely 99% working, put it that way. And it's a great achievement for Bill Clinton. I give him credit for it.
And you, I know you're humble, but you too. And I've had a friend once said to me, he said, He's talking about the conflict between the Jews and the Arabs. You want to call it Israel-Hamas, but it's before Hamas, right? We're going on for 100 years, more than that, thousands of years. And they go, well, wait a second. If the Brits and the Irish can stop bombing each other, why can't the Jews and the Arabs do the same? Is there any comparison between the two?
Well, there is in that in the Middle East, the Palestinians have never had someone having the guts to come forward. Like in Northern Ireland, Gerry Adams, I have differences with him now as far as some of his policy positions, but at that time, he realized there had to be a peace agreement, but he also knew that, the famous movie, Michael Collins, well, Michael Collins, he was the one who negotiated the treaty back in 1922, and he got killed when he came back to Ireland because many people consider that to be a sellout. So Adams had a hard court in the IRA, which he had to bring along. And he was under death threats from his own people as well as from the loyalist paramilitaries. And yet he was able to stand up and say, this is what we have to do. We're not going to get everything we want, but we're going to get 70%, 75% of what we need, and that's it. And I remember Madeleine Albright used to say to me, why can't the Palestinians find a Gerry Adams? Because Arafat would agree to everything when he was over here, then go back and not deliver.
Right.
But Bill Clinton will tell you that his probably biggest disappointment in foreign policy was dealing with Arafat because they gave him, when he was over here with Barack in 2000, I guess, there were the final negotiations. And basically, Ahern Barack was willing to give so much to Arafat, but he could not accept it because he would have to tell the Palestinian people that Israel had a right to exist. So they threw everything out the window, and there's still now been 26 years of war because they will not accept Israel, being a real country,
right,
and having sovereignty. Well, in Northern Ireland, they admit it's sort of a complex situation, a power-sharing government between both sides, the pro-British and the pro-Irish, and also that then they have close contact with the south of Ireland and with Britain. So anyway, it was hard to put together, but you had people with guts on both sides. And I give, like, Ian Paisley, who was known as the most anti-Catholic, anti-Irish person, his son, Ian Paisley Jr., has been a stalwart for making this work. And Paisley himself, near the end, he was working closely. There is not that, unfortunately, anyone on the Palestinian side who was willing to do that. And so there is. I don't see much hope. Either you kill them or you have somebody come forward.
That's a good point. Excellent job. Fascinating conversation, Pete. Really. Well, you're great every day, but this particularly today, what a great conversation. So I'm sure you heard Bill Donahue in here earlier. He is still the president of the Catholic League. He has been that for 33 years. He's hilarious. He's outspoken. He's not shy. And he's Irish, and he said, I'm very upset with my country. He says, I don't even speak to a lot of my family members who are still in Ireland because he's very pro-Israel, like you are. He's very pro-Israel, and we know that Ireland was one of the very first countries to step up and recognize a Palestinian state, whatever the hell that means. It's so ridiculous. It really is. But they did it, and they now have kind of earned this reputation as anti-Semites. I don't know about the American Irish, but certainly they're in the country of Ireland. Israelis and Jews, they now consider Irish people there anti-Semites. It bothers Bill Donahue. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, first of all, what the Irish government is doing is indefensible. And it's really unfortunate because back in the 1930s, when Ireland actually wrote its first constitution, when they finally were able to do it, after getting out from under British rule, they were the only country in Europe they specifically put in their constitution defending the rights of Jews. And this is at a time when Hitler was running wild through Europe, and yet the Irish Constitution specifically says the Jewish people have full rights and freedoms in the country. And that was considered very outspoken, courageous in doing it. And over the years, there was very little, if any. Ireland had a Jewish mayor in Dublin before we had one in New York. I mean, so it's...
So this does pose the question, Pete. What happened?
They went European. I agree with what Bill Donahue said, is that Ireland and always, listen, look at the British, look at the French. I mean, they are the whole, the elite in Europe and the sectarian, the non-sectarian people in Europe. They're getting away from traditions and religions, and they basically is considered to be sophisticated, to be pro-Palestinian. Similar to what you see here in the universities here in the United States. And that's really unfortunate. Ireland that's becoming much more European. They want to be accepted. They want to be don't want to be socially rejected. They want to show how sophisticated they are. And then young people, as we see here, unfortunately, listen, we elect them in Nami. So who would have thought that after 25 years after 9/11? So something's going on around the world. You need people to stand up to it, and that's why what you're doing is great. I try to do the best that I can. And even like in my district, the last 18 years I was in Congress, only about 2 or 3% of my district was Jewish. But yet, to me, it's in America's national interest to stand with Israel. Also, Israel does our work for us in the Middle East, and they are the only real democracy in that part of the world.